Hello and welcome back to another conspiracy video. Today we will be looking at 4 topics I've been wanting to cover for quite a while now. Number 1. The Dyatlov Pass. This was a mysterious event that took place in the Ural Mountains between 1 and 2 Feb 1959. 9 experienced hikers were all killed in seemingly strange ways. Some of their bodies were found with broken bones, crushed organs, cracked skulls and missing tongues. You're right. Missing tons. On the 20th of Feb, a volunteer search party went out looking for them. They spent 6 days looking for them, and on the 26th of February, they found their abandoned camp. At the campsite, all the tents were collapsed and covered in snow, and all of their hiking equipment was all left behind. Inside the tents, there were signs of struggles of them trying to get out of them, which makes no sense. Why would you leave a warm, safe-ish environment to get out into the elements of the cold? There were footprints found outside the tents which indicated they were walking and not running away from whatever it was that they were trying to get away from. The search party decided to follow the direction of the footprints, which led them to a makeshift fire beside a tall cedar tree where the bodies of 2 of the hikers were found. Despite the weather being minus 30 degrees Celsius, the hikers were found with only light undergarments and socks on. That doesn't make sense at all. Later, in the surrounding snowy wilderness, the bodies of 3 more hikers were found covered in a light layer of snow. All 5 of the hikers were found facing the direction of the tent, perhaps indicating that they were struggling to make it back. Although their autopsies showed signs of minor bodily injuries, it was concluded that they had actually died from hypothermia. A whole 2 months later, 75 meters from that same cedar tree, the bodies of the remaining 4 hikers were discovered. They were covered in about 3 meters of snow, and 3 or 4 of the bodies had sustained fatal injuries. Lead investigator Lev Ivanov concluded that the cause of death was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome. And of course, the theories ran completely wild. A KGB cover-up, aliens and the Yeti have all factored into the story of what happened to the hikers. Many believe that a threat inside the tent forced the hikers to cut their way out, but there was never any sign of a threat, other than possibly a small fire that couldn't be contained. But that hasn't been proven either. In 2013, there was actually a movie made about the Dyatlov Pass called Devil's Pass. And let me tell you something, it was quite weird and wacky, showing signs of aliens and like funny looking monsters that have been contaminated by radiation or whatever the case may be. So I wouldn't watch that movie if you're looking for a sort of true story about it, but nonetheless a good watch. My views, I don't know, it's a difficult one. The fact that there were struggles of them trying to get outside the tent, and the fact that the footprints were showing that they were walking and not running away, which is another strange thing. Then if they had like all the time in the world, why didn't they dress better for the surrounding conditions? I don't know, I guess it's one of those that will always remain just an unknown mystery. Number 2. Where is Jimmy Hoffa buried? Jimmy Hoffa was an American labor union leader who served from the 1950s to the 1970s. He was born on Valentine's Day, 1913. He was extremely powerful and also had become involved in organized crime, which included jury tampering, attempted bribery, conspiracy, and mail-in wire fraud. He then went on to serve 5 years of a 13-year sentence in prison, and then President Richard Nixon commuted his sentence just to time served. Hoffa disappeared on July 30th, 1975, after going out to a meeting that was meant to take place at 2 o'clock. At 2:15, he called his wife, saying the people he was meeting, they had stood him up, and he was completely angry about this. He then said he would be home at about 4 o'clock just to grill steaks for dinner. At 2:45, a witness saw him leaving the venue without a struggle and was in the back of a car with 3 other men. Till this day, no one has ever seen or heard from him again, and he was legally declared dead in 1982. Now, there is many theories as to what happened to him. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them, and most common one was that he was taken out in a hit. What they did with his body may differ from who you ask. These are the places that they have suggested where he's been buried. Under a wooden barn, under a swimming pool, under the famous field in the Giants Stadium in Meadowlands, under a driveway, and in the foundations of the General Motors headquarters in Detroit. Interesting enough, if you've seen the movie The Irishman, you will remember that Al Pacino portrayed Jimmy Hoffa in there. And alongside him was Robert De Niro, who was sort of his best friend in the movie. And then Robert De Niro just took his gun out and shot him in the head and took him out. So if you're going to believe that story, it was Robert De Niro's character that actually killed Jimmy Hoffa. Number 3, Marilyn McCain. This is a real sad story that I've been following now for years. I've watched numerous documentaries and TV shows, and there are so many holes in the stories. Before I start, I just want to say that I do truly hope and pray she is alive and well out there somewhere. I'm sure everyone has heard about this story, but I want to just go through some of the alleged theories people are discussing. Some say parents Jerry and Kate are responsible for her death. If you watch some of the interviews they have done, they don't seem too distressed or panicked as much as you would think. Well, then again, everyone does handle grief differently, so that would be a cruel assumption to make. Here is a little clip of Jerry being asked an easy question. Surely if you are innocent and know it off by heart, the answer should be a pretty easy one to answer, no? Listen here and let me know what you think.
Did you kill your daughter?
No, never. And, there's nothing with any logic that could, you would have to start with why, how, when, who, and there's just simply, the answer to any of these things is there's nothing to suggest anything. So, no, that's an emphatic no.
I don't know, guys. That seemed a little strange to me. Another thing that was totally shocking to me was something that Kate McCann wrote in her book. It's a disturbing passage that reads, I asked Jerry apprehensively if he had had any really horrible thoughts or visions of Madeline. He nodded. Haltingly, I told him about the awful pictures that scrolled through my head of her perfect little genitals torn apart. Why on earth is she talking about that in a book? That is madness in my opinion, and something that should be kept at home between the two of them. Especially in the fact that she went out and said she published this book so that her friends and family and her kids would understand what the two of them went through. I don't think your kids want to hear something like that in the book. Now, some of the popular theories on what's happened to poor Maddie are as follows. She was kidnapped for a sex trafficking ring operating in Europe. The parents drugged her and sold her and planned the whole abduction. The parents killed her by accident while dosing her with Calpol. Sniffer dogs also detected blood in the apartment as well as their car. A Portuguese serial child kidnapper took her. He was also linked to 5 previous cases in the area. A childless couple kidnapped her. Suspicious characters have been seen around the area. The enigma theory is that some people believe Marilyn McCain never existed. It's probably one of the more out there McCain conspiracy theories, but people definitely believe it. Some even think she isn't actually a person and was made up by the British government to distract attention from other news stories or to raise money for the country. The Portuguese police framed the parents to save tourism in the area and country. She wandered out of the apartment on her own and made her way down to the ocean and drowned. So there you have it, folks. For me, if someone asked my personal opinion, I would go with the theory that her parents accidentally overdosed her, and then in a panic, they had to get rid of the body. So what they did with it, well, who knows, but, the fact that the dogs smelt and detected blood inside the apartment, as well as smelling blood and detecting blood in the car that they were using at the time, it sort of just puts a puzzle in my mind that they possibly did kill her by accident and then panicked, put her in the car and then took her wherever they took her to get rid of the body. So that's it, guys. I don't know what else to say about it. It's completely strange, and especially if you watch a lot of the interviews they've done, they seem very cold and cold-hearted, but in other times they seem completely jovial and like nothing is going on. So I'll leave it out there for you to decide. Number 4, Princess Di was murdered. I was about 10 years old when she died, so I never really understood much about it. But once I got older, I started hearing strange stories, and it soon dawned to me that this was not no ordinary case. On the 31st of August 1997, Diana died in a car crash in the Ponte d'Alma tunnel in Paris while the driver was fleeing the paparazzi. The crash also resulted in the deaths of her companion Dodi Fayed and the driver Henry Paul, who was the acting security manager of the Hotel Ritz Paris. Diana's bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, however survived the crash. The initial French judicial investigation concluded that the crash was caused by Paul's intoxication, reckless driving, speeding at 65 miles per hour, and effects of prescription drugs. In February 1998, Mohammed Al-Fayed, owner of the Paris Ritz where Paul had worked, publicly said the crash had been planned and accused MI6 and the Duke of Edinburgh. An inquest that had started in London in 2004 and continued all the way into 2008 attributed the crash to grossly negligent driving by Paul and to the pursuing paparazzi, who forced Paul to speed into the tunnel. On the 7th of April 2008, the jury returned a verdict of unlawful killing. On the day after the final verdict of the inquest, Al-Fayed announced that he would end his 10-year campaign to establish that the tragedy was murder rather than an accident. He said he did so for the sake of the princess's children. So if this was all planned, the question we ask, why and who? Well, back in 1995, she did an interview with Martin Basher, and he asked a couple of interesting questions. In the clip, it seems a bit eerie now, knowing what happens to her. It's almost like she knew something bad was going to happen.
Do you think you'll ever be Queen?
No, I don't. No.
Why do you think that?
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts. But I don't see myself being queen of this country. I don't think many people would want me to be queen. Actually, when I say many people, I mean the establishment that I'm married into. Because they've decided that I'm a non-starter.
Why do you think they've decided that?
Because I do things differently. Because I don't go by a rule book. Because I lead from the heart, not the head. And albeit that's got me into trouble in my work, I understand that. But someone's got to go out there and love people and show it.
And do you think that because of the way you behave, that's precluded you effectively from becoming Queen?
Yes, well, not precluded me, I wouldn't say that. I just don't think I have as many supporters in that environment than I did. Yeah.
You mean within the royal household?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They see me as a threat of some kind. And I'm here to do good, I'm not a
Oh, that was pretty creepy actually. And then her one-time butler Paul said he had a letter from Diana, and this is what it read. I am sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high. This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. ... is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for Charles to marry. That is like a flashing red robot. It's right there in the open. Some other sources claim that she was killed, in fact, because she was pregnant. I don't even know why that would matter. She already had 2 sons. Some other theory headlines that are quite popular in today's news pointed out the following. The paparazzi made the car crash intentionally. Driver Henry Paul intentionally caused the crash. There was something wrong with the Mercedes that Diana was traveling in. Diana's medical care was deliberately sabotaged. I personally believe that she was knocked off by the royal family, as she didn't do things the way they wanted her to. She was a free spirit, and from what I've heard, a great-hearted person. Like most series, that's all that there will be until solid proof comes out, but in a case like this with the royal family, I don't ever see that happening. So there you have it, folks. Please let me know what you think in the comments section below, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And once again, don't forget to look under your bed tonight, because they are always watching.